hands are full of flowers, my ears are full of songs, my heart is sad.
Hey everyone, welcome to Remap. My name is Jared, and today we're going to be taking a look at the AAA blockbuster Horizon Forbidden West by Guerrilla Games. So, Guerrilla Games really shocked everyone in 2017 with their new IP, Horizon Zero Dawn. It was completely different from their previous projects, most notably the Killzone series, but Horizon was so successful that they immediately began work on the sequel, which I'll be talking about today. Horizon Forbidden West is a third-person action-adventure game where you play as Aloy, a woman exploring a large, post-apocalyptic map of the West Coast filled to the brim with dangerous machines. Now, I'm going to do my best to make this a spoiler-free review. With how complicated the story is here, there might be some small tidbits here or there, but nothing egregious. I'll do my best. And as always, before we get started, these are my opinions and mine alone. So, to start off, I'd like to talk about how beautiful the open world is that Guerrilla Games designed for this game and that you get to explore. The Forbidden West, as it's called, is a sprawling open world with unique biomes, giving each area different visuals and a different style of play. You know, you've got the wide open desert with flat stretches of sand dunes that offer zero cover, the snowy mountains where half of your time is going to be spent climbing and gliding through these mountains, and destroyed skyscrapers where you get bits of lore about the civilization that once existed there. All of this combines into an extremely impressive graphical display. And as we've come to expect from these AAA blockbusters, there's just gorgeous lighting with rays casting shadows across the environment. This game also ran flawlessly on my PlayStation 5 with performance mode giving me a rock-solid 60 FPS. And the open world label lives up to the hype in this case. You know, after a quick loading screen to start the game up, you can walk from one end of the map to the other with no loading screens. I mean, it's frankly incredible. I mean, obviously, there's some strategic bottlenecks to prevent the player from being overwhelmed, you know, the training wheels at first by the map. And obviously, there's, you know, clever hidden and procedural loading zones to keep everything working smoothly in the background, but that doesn't change the fact that it just feels like there's no loading screens. This is an enormous world that just ran flawlessly. But one of the largest struggles for open world games, especially these modern open world games, is making the environment feel lived in, you know, with how large they are. In a linear story, you can much more easily build encounters with the player because you always know exactly where they will be. These detailed approaches just aren't feasible with open world games because the player could literally be anywhere on the map at any time. So besides these main story encounters with characters where, you know the player will be here to complete this objective, I'm always interested to see how open world games handle this dilemma. Horizon Forbidden West handles this in a fairly standard way that you see in many other open world games. You know, certain side missions or story moments will change characters' dialogue when you go talk to them, but it's all fairly minor stuff. You know, I was a little disappointed by some of the towns in general because most of the game, it feels like their only existence is to go there to visit the shop to buy, weapons, armor, and equipment. There's really not a lot of relationship building per se, like going back, getting to know all the inhabitants just because of how enormous this map is and just how much stuff you have to go explore. Fortunately, the incredible animations did make these small encounters a lot less stale. Horizon Forbidden West has some of the best facial animations I have ever seen in video games. I expect there's more computing power behind Aloy's face than there was on the moon landing. She's super expressive, and the tone of her words are clearly conveyed by her expressions. And it was really funny seeing her talk to minor characters at times because you could notice a clear downgrade in quality when the camera panned from their side of the conversation to Aloy's and back. One element that this game certainly did not master was Aloy's hair. Her hair is not pre-rendered and just played back in cutscenes. It's not rendered beforehand. It is rendered live, just like during normal gameplay in the cutscenes. And this makes it look super janky and distracting from these emotional, scripted moments where there's a heartfelt exchange between two people. And you see her hair just... It's hard to take her seriously when it looks like there's a wacky inflatable tube man on her head. Moving on, the sound design does its job, but it's most certainly not a star of this game. The voice acting is really solid, with, I thought, a great performance by Ashley Birch, the voice of Aloy, but nothing else really stuck out to me. Combat usually ended up combining into a loud mess where sounds of different weapons and enemies would just make a large cacophony of noise. And the soundtrack was also very simple, with some basic battle themes used over and over, and none of the emotional moments in this game were driven by the music. And I know it's not necessarily the priority for, a big open world adventure game, but I would have liked to have heard more. The highlight of the soundtrack was definitely the song that played during the credits, In the Flood, Levitza's version. Great song. I wish there was more music up to that quality. But there's only one element of the sound design that was egregiously bad. If you haven't played on a PS5, you may not know this, but the controller has a built-in speaker on it. This is utilized by games to provide feedback to the player. In Horizon's case, you frequently hear it when you activate your focus, which is an item that shows items and things of interest around you. However, there's an enemy machine whose attack can disrupt your focus, disabling it for a short time. And for some reason, the developers decided, hey, when their focus gets disabled, we should play the most annoying, loud, obnoxious alarm sound at full volume that we can think of. I had to go into my PlayStation system settings to drop the volume of the controller by over half. You can't go adjust it in the game. You got to go to your system settings. It was just astronomically annoying for the 30 seconds I heard it before I dropped it down. So, I've talked about the visuals and the sound, but now let's talk about the gameplay. Aloy has a variety of equipment for both combat and traversal. In combat, you have the choice of playing the game how you want to play. I found myself, sitting back, setting traps, using powerful bows that felt satisfying to use with some really nice haptic feedback from the controller. But, other players may go spec out a full melee build and preferred to get up close and personal to enemies. But Aloy felt really responsive and fluid, no matter what style you chose. My criticisms of the combat gameplay specifically don't come in with how the player character acts and controls, but it's with how enemies act. Most of the enemies you'll encounter are machines, which are, aggressive, robotic adaptations of creatures you may recognize. Think of a large robot polar bear with ice attacks and, claw attacks as it tries to jump at you. And these machines are extremely aggressive and will lunge at you quickly. And I'm thinking, no problem. I'm playing this on normal difficulty, blah, blah, blah. Might be a little struggle here and there, but it'll be fine. But when these machines attack, they don't attack the location you are in at a particular point in time. They attack you. This means that, let's say, a robot tiger can initiate a lunge or a projectile attack. I can move from my current position, and the enemy will adjust mid-air to hit me. You have to dodge near perfectly to avoid enemy attacks, right at the last second. And if I wanted to play a game with dodging this precise, I would just go play something like Dark Souls. Couple this with the fact that Aloy gets knocked down when hit. It's very, very easy to get stun locked, where you just keep getting hit over and over and over before getting a chance to run away, because every time she gets up, she's immediately being knocked right back down by these hyper-aggressive machines. And This is why I personally never ran a melee build, because I didn't even want to put myself in any situations to give that a chance of happening. And I know I spent most of this section, complaining, but I do want to highlight yet again just how good the bow combat is here in Horizon Forbidden West. Sliding down a hill and slow motion while shooting the tail off a giant thunderjaw is just awesome. So don't let this one small issue scare you off. Maybe you'll have a better go at it than I did. But traversal is about as clean as you would expect, with quick climbing, jumping, and an awesome glider that I loved using to jump off mountains. Plus a special traversal method you unlock late game. I won't spoil it here, but I do wish it was unlocked earlier. It's just that good. And beyond just how the game controls, I was really happy with the progression system that was implemented. Skill points are accumulated rapidly. It feels like every 5 minutes you're getting one. And this, coupled with a free respec system for the skill tree, makes it easy to create whatever build you want. Which was great to see, because in so many games, you'll get a tiny skill tree, you get 1 point every 3 hours of gameplay, and respecking, you better have some materials saved up. So it was nice that Forbidden West let me do whatever the heck I want, gave me the freedom to do it. And in this skill tree, there are also new active skills that play a little animation and give you a unique buff depending on which one you select. And there's stuff like active camo, some damage buffs, giant AoE nuke, an overshield, a nice little variety. And are they gimmicks? Yes, of course. They're for sure gimmicks, but I thought they were fun gimmicks that I found myself using frequently. So that's probably the best compliment I could give. I was actively using them. And all of these attacks and abilities are used to help defeat a diverse roster of awesome enemy machines. Their designs are unique, visually stunning, and actually intimidating. They make every fight with human enemies just kind of bland and boring by comparison. You go from giant elephant-sized machine monsters with cannons to, shooting 2 guys running at you with an axe. It's very clear where the highlights of the combat are. And the final 2 gameplay elements I want to touch on real quick are machine overrides and leveling your equipment. The machine overrides were such a missed opportunity because I never felt I had a chance to use them. The overrides are where you go to an enemy machine and you override it, bringing it to your side, fighting for you temporarily. And it would have been so much fun to override a Thunderjaw or a Tremor Tusk and send it into a bandit camp, but with how spread out and sort of compartmentalized battles are and the whole map is in general, I never felt like I had a chance to do that. And it's one of those things that makes you wonder if this game could have been better with a smaller open world. Now, there's nothing you have to worry about when it comes to leveling gear. It's just plain awful. I understand that it should take some effort to upgrade the best legendary gear, but in Forbidden West, it's just excessive. You need so many parts from these dangerous machines that you rarely come across. And to top it all off, the loot you need, it's not even guaranteed drops. You have to go out of your way to find this one spawn location of this one enemy, and then once you finally get there, some of it you might get by shooting off a tiny little machine part that you have to be very careful to hit until, wait a minute, in the thick of battle, the enemy lands on the part and it has been launched halfway across the map. Now you can't pick it up. Or it's a circulator, which are drops that are RNG based. The fact that I can fight some of the hardest enemies in this game, just like save and quit, reset their spawns, go to them, and not even get the drop I need guaranteed, is just stupid. I was extremely frustrated by the equipment leveling in Forbidden West. Now, moving on to the story. This is a challenging game to wrap your head around if you didn't play the first one. There's a long recap and exposition in the beginning, but it doesn't come close to explaining the details and just all the depth you learn in the first game. And couple this with the fact that a number of characters return from the first game. This is a sequel where you really should play the first one beforehand. You know, it's not set long time in the future. It's not a prequel sequel. If you feel like playing Forbidden West, you really need to play Horizon Zero Dawn to understand what is going on. But I will give Guerrilla some credit when it comes to the story, because you cannot predict it in this game. You know, so many games you play, you can tell what's coming or which direction the narrative's moving. Oh, this is clearly the bad guy. This is clearly what's going to happen. I was halfway through Forbidden West, and I had no idea what was coming up. At every turn, I was like, no, which character's going to show up? What's going to happen? I don't know what we're going to do. It really kept me on my toes, but it did result in an ending that wasn't as fulfilling. Because this unexpected nature, you know, the twists and turns back and forth, new stuff popping up everywhere, no matter where you looked, just made it hard for me to get focused and invested. When, you know, I get invested in a character, get ready for, oh, we need this payoff, you know, we need to see this happen in the story. And wait a minute, there's a freight train going over there, we're going down this lane. There's just a lot going on. And part of this is probably due to my issues with the tone of the game, because throughout it, the tone felt all over the place. It's always a struggle with open world games. You know, I'm not just picking on Forbidden West here, because in open world games, you can immediately jump from, let's say, 4 hours of side quests into an emotional story segment that you've been waiting to do for the last week. And it's just a challenge because there's no way of predicting how a player is going to play the game, what they're going to do, the order of the missions besides the story missions. So I would have rather they added more depth and content to the main story, even if it meant sacrificing some of the side content. You know, it's a huge open world. I would have been okay with maybe trimming the size of it, trimming the side quests, just so they can give more main story content to help flesh everything out a little bit more. And speaking of the tone, I know there's a lot on Aloy's mind, but it felt like all the drama in the first act of this game could have been solved by a 5-minute conversation with other characters. It was just annoying at times to see how characters would interact with one another, and I'm like, guys, this should not be a problem. I don't know why this is an issue. But my largest issue, looking at Horizon Forbidden West as a whole, wasn't something that it did, but it was something that it was missing. I can't put my finger on it, but when you play a lot of video games, you'll know what I mean by saying this. Some games just have that feeling, that little special something that makes you go, wow, as you play it. That it factor that sets games apart from other ones. And I just didn't feel it. I didn't think Forbidden West had it. You know, it's a great game technically. It checks all the boxes, you know, a large, diverse open world, reoccurring and new characters, an interesting story, some fluid gameplay, but I really didn't take anything away from it. You know, I've finished it, I actually platinumed it, and I don't really feel anything about it. It's sort of like having a nice meal that you forget about after a few days. I remember thinking, oh, I had a great meal, but I couldn't really tell you what exactly I ate or liked about it. It's just like, oh, it was a nice meal. So I'm going to be giving Horizon Forbidden West a B+. It's a really good game, technically sound, some fun moments. It's just not a great one. It's not that extra tier that I would love to see. And many people have said that they played it safe, and I'd have to agree wholeheartedly. That's probably the best way of describing it. It's a AAA game played safe. There's nothing egregiously bad, but there's nothing that'll blow you away. But I will say, if you have played and enjoyed the first one, Horizon Zero Dawn, I would recommend checking Horizon Forbidden West out, especially as it goes on sale since it's been out for a little while now. It's a pretty easy platinum. I got a solid 50 hours of playtime out of it. It's just not a drop everything and play this experience. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. You have been listening to Remap, the gaming podcast. My name is Jared, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.